2020 marks the 20th anniversary of Icon Accreditation. Myself and several other accredited conservators are opening the doors of our studios virtually to give you, the public, a better understanding of our work. Hello, my name's Helen Hughes. I'm proud to say I'm an Icon Accredited Conservator Restorer, and I have been one for the last 20 years. For most of my career, I worked with English Heritage in the Building Conservation Department before leaving in 2010 to establish my own consultancy, Helen Hughes, Historic Interiors Research and Conservation. I am an architectural paint researcher and commissioned to investigate the decorative finishes applied to architectural elements such as historic interiors, painted exteriors, railings, bridges, and sometimes I'm asked to investigate clock towers. Having invited you into my studio, I must now ask you to leave and travel with me to the north. I cannot bring my objects into the studio. They're just too large and immovable, and sometimes quite difficult to access, and I need a head for heights. And here I am being hoisted up so I can get access to the clock dials and take my samples. The project I'm intending to showcase is my investigation of the painted dials of the clock tower at Auckland Castle. The gatehouse and clock tower were erected around 1750 by Bishop Trevor. The structure is an important example of 18th century Gothic and is listed Grade 1. Auckland Castle is an amazing complex of buildings and interiors dating from the 11th to the 19th century. My research in these spaces has informed the recent redecoration of many of the interiors. In January of this year, I was commissioned to establish the decorative history of the exteriors, the railings, the doors, and of course, the clock face. Architectural paint research involves 3 stages. The first is a research of the documentary evidence, the second is an on-site investigation, and the third is examination of removed samples in cross-section under the microscope. When I'd been hoisted into place, I removed a series of paint samples, carefully recording their locations. The dials were made of metal and were badly corroded in places. Having collected the samples from the clock face and returned to the studio, I can now examine them under low magnification under a stereo binocular microscope. This is an important part of the process, as it allows me to examine the samples and select fragments which retain substantial paint layers. So here we are in my microscope room, which is fitted with a much more powerful microscope, which allows me to see the cross sections in 50 to 500 times magnification. I've also fitted with an ultraviolet light source here, which is very useful when I want to examine varnishes. So the paint samples I removed from the clock tower are now encapsulated in resin, and I can examine them in cross section. The examination of the paint sample under high magnification was quite surprising. The clock dials were originally painted in a dark grey paint with gold lettering. The current blue decoration is a comparatively modern scheme, properly introduced after the 1960s. I then prepare an easy-to-understand, jargon-free report, which my clients can readily understand and use. I draw up an A4 period chart, which collates all the decorations applied to the external elements of the castle. So, I have answered the research brief. I've established the decorative history of the clock dials. It is now the decision of the curators of Auckland Castle whether they wish to reinstate Bishop Trevor's dark grey paint or retain the bright blue scheme which was applied for the first time during the 1960s. Becoming an accredited conservator was a milestone in my career and the end of a very rigorous process. Being able to put the letters ACR after my name signifies the recognition of my peers that my work meets a high standard. Clients commissioning an ACR conservator may be confident they are engaging a professional who has a high level of competency, equivalent to that of the other chartered professions. To find an ACR, take a look at Icon's Conservation Register where you'll find over 800 ACRs operating over a wide range of conservation disciplines.